I've got a goal right now when I go over it with you. And that goal is to do two things. One is for you to understand it, and two is for you never to use it. Or to use it so sparingly that you use it for just unusual circumstances. And also, the reason I'm going over the contingency is because you're going to get them. So what I'm going to do right now is we're going to kind of go over the form, and then I'm going to explain to you why you need to talk your sellers out of it. All right? I wanted the people that aren't accustomed to this to do it. And I'm going to tell you why. This is from the enjoyable experiences I've had in the past. So here's what we got. So the contingency, the house sale contingency form, you got it up there? Okay. So the top portion you just fill out with the address and everything, the house that they're purchasing, that kind of thing. Then we come down to this portion here, okay? And here's how it reads. You have to check one of these boxes. Buyer represents that. Buyer's house is currently listed for sale on the MLS. So it either is or isn't. And then the second box is buyer's house will be listed for sale and placed in the multiple listing service within 3 days of acceptance of the offer and will remain for during the contingency period. So the good thing about that, it gets on our form, and hopefully if people are using this, it says that you may be right, you may have this contract in front of you, but if you don't list the home for sale through MLS, then we're not, it's got to be one or the other. There isn't a third box, thank goodness. Okay? Now we're going to go down to the contingency portion, line 12. Contingency. This offer is accepted contingent upon buyers selling their real estate located at, and this is they put their address in, that they're the home that they're selling. And then it talks about the number of days for the contingency period. How many days, how much time do you allow somebody to sell their home? Does it matter?
Yeah, sure.
Everything matters, so that was the right answer. How much does it really matter, though? I mean, if you're going to have this contingency on there, I mean, does it matter? Yeah. It matters, but I don't know how much it matters. I think I would probably make it shorter only to push the buyer to have a deadline that he has in order to make this thing happen. So the only thing it really does is it pushes that buyer to say, you know, here's how much time you got. So how much time should we give them? Well, 2009, I would have gave him about a year.
I was going to say, they depend a lot on the current market.
Yeah, it could depend on the market, but how about today? How much time would you give somebody?
More than 30 days.
Yeah, 30 days maybe, 45. So let's say 30 to 60 days. 2 weeks is too short, right? As a general rule, it takes that long to take pictures from the house, right? So, 30 to 60 days maybe. Could be longer. It's a decision that the buyer and the seller have to make, and those kinds of things. But if you've got your home priced right, it should. I think somebody told me a statistic the other day that homes are selling, I think the average time was like 24 days or something. Is that possible? Drew, do you know, is that true?
In markets where they're moving and price right, yeah, they're going quick.
Huh. Well, don't tell my sellers that, would you? All right. So let's say 30 to 60 days we're going to put in there. From acceptance of this, go ahead.
Can I just say, so
Yeah.
this is the period of time that my seller is not going to be able to accept an offer from anyone else because they're in business with this buyer.
Hold that just for a second because it's coming down here. But there's a truth to what you just said, okay? How are we doing time? Okay. Okay, let's go back. So I'm back up here in line 14 where it talks about the number of days, and then 15 is contingent period. From acceptance of this offer or any written extensions thereof signed by buyer and seller, so they can extend it if they want. Buyer may, at their option, waive this contingency in writing prior to the expiration of the contingent period. Okay? They can waive it if they can buy their house and they have the financing to do it. Maybe, and the only reason that makes any sense to me in here is that if, in fact, they start to believe, let's say they put their home on the market and they're getting so much activity and they really believe their home is going to sell and they can't afford to buy it without theirs being sold, they may remove that contingency because they're so confident that it will sell, okay? In the event buyer is unable to sell their home within the contingent period or any written extensions thereof, I only need to learn to talk like that. In the middle, thereof, this or that. Seller and buyer agree to immediately sign a mutual release terminating the residential purchase agreement and authorizing the brokerage attorney earnest money, okay? This is the interesting part. This is 21 through 30 is why you will never get this signed from one of my sellers, okay? And then I'm going to tell you why. You're never going to get it through me. I guarantee you that. I actually fired a guy one time that was working directly with me that knew my policy on it. And he wrote one. This is years ago. He allowed a contingency from another broker on my property and then told the closing department not to let me know that it was contingent.
Oh, jeez.
Because of this paragraph right here. And here's the paragraph. I mean, if he had made a mistake, that's one thing. Making a mistake, hiding it from me was a little different. Secondary offers. During the contingency period, seller may continue to market the property for sale and accept a secondary offer. Did you hear what that said? Secondary. That means they have a contract on the house and they're going to buy the house, and if you get another contract, it's secondary, all right? I'm going to finish the sentence and I'm going to talk about it. A secondary offer contingent upon release of this residential purchase agreement. Seller agrees to promptly notify the buyer or their agent that a secondary offer has been accepted. Buyer shall elect within 48 hours after notification to, and it says either buy the house or not buy the house. That's what it says, okay? That's what the A and B says. So he has 48 hours to say, I'm going to move forward and buy the house, or 48 hours to say, I'm not going to buy it. Before I give you all the arguments of why people try to talk me into it, I'm going to ask you where the problem lies. Give me the problems with what I've just read.
Buyer has all the power.
Buyer has power. Buyer has...
The contingent offer is, it doesn't, every other offer that comes in, even if it's not contingent, would be considered a secondary offer.
It's secondary offer for 48 hours. Okay, but I'm going to you mind if I play devil's advocate for a second, Robin? But 48 hours isn't that long. Well, you could change it to 24 hours, or 1 hour, or 1 minute, or 30 days. You could change it to whatever you want. But what's the problem? Drew?
The problem I see here is it says the seller can continue to market the property, but that conflicts with our MLS rules, where it says you must market contingent. And although you can continue to show contingent properties, it's not a common practice.
Okay,
amongst agents.
you're going to where I want. First of all, you can continue to market it.
You can market it, but it's in the MLS.
And it's in MLS, and you're marketing it, but what's the problem?
It's marked contingent.
It's marked contingent.
Most people
You're going where I want you to go.
contingent.
Huh?
Most people aren't gonna show a contingent property because they feel like that's a waste of time.
Okay, but why? Why is it a waste of
The
time?
buyer has 48 hours to purchase it.
Now tell me the problem with the agent. That's a problem. Tell me what the agent's thinking. Why isn't he going to show it?
There's already an offer on it.
There's already an offer on it, but it's contingent. They might not be able to buy it, right? I'm going to answer the question. I'm just making you
The
think?
agent's not calling you.
Because this is where I start jumping up and down and everything, going wild. What?
Because the agent doesn't pick up the phone and call you and say, what's the nature of the contingency?
Yeah.
What can you tell me? They
Could
don't,
you tell
they
me?
don't call and ask.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to tell you why I wouldn't show a house that was contingent. And I'm pretty strong on this. You tell me how this, I'm going to create the picture for you again. I show the house that's contingent, right? How much time does that take me, Drew, to show the house? I got to set it up. I got to drive there. I got to show it. So it's a couple hours, right? Then after they look at it and they really like it, do they usually sit down right then and buy it? Not normal. They might. If the circumstances are right, they might just buy it right then. But let's just assume it's a little more than normal. Do you think they'd possibly come back for a second look? How much does that take?
Another hour.
Another hour, 2 hours by the time you set it up, go through. So now you got 2 hours and you're going to write the offer, right? Do you have to explain it to them, or do they just sign it and just send it back to you? Oh, so you have to explain it to them. You have to write the offer. How long is that going to take us?
You got 6 hours.
Huh?
You're 6 hours in now.
Yeah, you got 6 hours in now. Now you write the offer. You got to send it to the other agent, right? And now the other agent has it, and he says, "Well, you know it was contingent." I say, "Yeah, I know, but they really want to buy it." And within 48 hours, let's assume we have another contract that's on this thing that they can buy in 48 hours. So they call the person that has the 48-hour contingency on it, and they go, "You know what? Yeah, I better buy it now. I don't want to lose it."
Yeah, you're helping promote the sale of the house, actually.
Oh my gosh! Now I don't know what. Let's calculate the pay in that 6 hours. How much you get paid for that 6 hours of time? 0.
Possibly not.
How many of you are real excited about showing contingent offers, contingent properties? Okay, so you see the problem.
Well, also you have an upset buyer.
You have an upset buyer. Now I have a question for you. I'm going to go back to that. I want to create the same scenario. Okay. Now the buyer doesn't have, the first buyer, the guy has this written on the house, right? He can afford to buy the house because his house wasn't sold, so he takes his option to go ahead and buy it, correct? Did you follow that? Okay. And he goes ahead to buy it, and he starts down the road to purchase it, and he's going to get it. I have a question for you. Why didn't he buy it before then?
He didn't have to.
He didn't have to, because you allowed him to sign this. You allowed this contract to be written on your house. That's why he didn't do it. Now I'm going to go back, and I want you, are you following me on this? Am I losing anybody? Okay. So now I'm going to go back to a conversation that I have with the agent that sends this to me. And if you send it to me, you get to enjoy this conversation. And here's the way the conversation works. Who would be a good person to do this with? Barbara.
Yes.
No, not Barbara. She gets all the good answers. Let me ask somebody that doesn't. Luke. All right? You're the guy that's calling me and you say, "Hey, Gary, I sent you an offer. It's contingent. They got a 48-hour, they call bump clauses built into it. And you take this, I'm going to take the assumption, you can go either way on this, but I want to do it both ways when I ask you this one question. I say, hey, Luke, thanks for sending it over to me. By the way, I was looking at the contingency. I saw the 48 hours on there. I said, I have a question for you. Can they afford to buy this without their home being sold?
Sure.
They can? Why aren't they buying it?
They just want to discharge the other loan, so they're not carrying 2 mortgage payments and 2 property taxes.
But they can afford to buy it.
Yes, but it'll be kind of tight for them.
Well, why don't they buy it?
I don't know, I've never done one.
for you.
Well, okay, okay. The problem, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pin that person down. Tell me why they weren't buying it.
Because we didn't convince them to do it.
Yeah, well, you know, this is the way you wanted to do it. Well, so what you want me to do is take my home off the market, or you want me to make it contingent because your people are nervous? You want to put my seller in a position that people won't show his house because your people are nervous? Well, I'm a little nervous. Now, what's the difference between a 1-minute contingency and a 48-hour contingency? There isn't any. If they can afford to buy it, Luke, tell them to buy it. Your offer is a good one. We're going to cross this out, and we're going to send it back to you. If they want to buy it, tell them to buy it. Okay? If not, then we might consider a concurrency. Okay? Now tell me they can't afford it.
They can't afford it.
Okay. They can't afford it? So they can't get a loan unless their home is sold. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Then I have a question for you, Luke. Why do they need 48 hours? They already know they can't buy it. Somebody that's done contingencies, argue with me.
They're gonna slash the price of their house, and they don't wanna slash it unless they have a chance to get this house.
Okay. Can they buy this house, Robin, without their home being sold?
No.
Why do they need 48 hours to tell me that?
They don't like risk. They want you to have all the risk.
But there is no risk for anybody because they can't buy
The
it.
seller.
They can't buy
They
it.
don't want to take the risk. They want
Yeah.
the seller to take it.
They want the seller to take the home. They can't buy the house if their home isn't sold. Why are we using this? Well, they don't want, well, nothing. There's no reason for me to give them 1 minute to decide if they want to buy the house. They can't.
So I think what you're saying is it's our job to protect the seller by eliminating this.
Yeah.
But a lot of the paperwork is written in the favor of the buyer.
Yeah, well, it's written, it's a buyer's form effectively, I guess. And people use it all the time. That's why I'm really pounding and we get these all the time from other agents. By the way, if I'm writing a contract on another person's house and they want to accept this, I might write it for my buyer. If the other agent's ignorant enough to allow their seller to sign this,
Right.
who am I to say no?
That's why I looked at you the way I did, because I never use it for the seller.
Right.
I always use, I have, when I used it, it's for the buyer.
Right.
So that, it just.
Well, let me say something about that just for a minute. One of the things I do is I do that same conversation with the buyer, actually. I usually don't even use them with the buyer. It doesn't mean I've never have. But when the buyer says, well, you know, I heard you had some 48-hour contingency, gives me 48 hours, I say, well, can you afford the house without yours being sold? Well, yeah. Then why don't we buy it? Now let's use the other one.
You know, sometimes the objection is, I need the proceeds of this house to put down on the next one. And then my next question then is, do you have anything to put down without the proceeds from the
Right.
sale of your house?
Right.
And if the answer is yes, then you should ask, have you talked to your loan officer about, do you qualify with that reduced down payment?
Yeah. What you're doing,
Because it opens up
yeah,
options.
what you're doing, Drew, which is very true, which is a little bit different, is this. You're solving a financing problem.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because sometimes that.
Right.
that is-
So you're right. You need to solve your financing problems to see what people can or can't do, and that's exactly right. But the end result is assuming they can't buy without theirs being sold, you know, then when they say to me, well, you know, I heard you have 48 hours, I say, well, you can't afford to buy it if you,
Right.
you know,
What's gonna change?
well, why do we need to give 48 hours to tell them anything? You already know the answer. So there's the house sale contingency. Yeah.
Two questions. We put in here a date that they have within 30 or 60 days or whatever.
Right.
Do the inspections and stuff continue before that?
Yes.
Yes, and according to this here, it says on the contingency, I believe that it talks about them going and getting the inspection done on the contingency.
So those begin immediately?
Those begin
So that
immediately.
if you find a problem with the house. Yeah.
Right.
Another question I have, and I know some people do this, I question whether I'm permitted to tell you, yes, my buyer can do this without selling this house, because
Well,
I'm giving you information.
I'm going to give you, Ed. I'm going to give you a good thought though, and this is, you're correct. I'm going to answer Ed's question. Ed's question is I don't know if I have the right to. The answer is this is a great question. This is for all real estate. You only have the right to do what they've asked you. They have given you permission to do.
Right.
So, as the real estate agent professional, our job is to coach or to tell people what we need to do in order to get what they want, which is the house. Because if you don't tell me, will it make a difference? And I'm the agent for the seller. If you don't tell me, will it make a difference in our decision?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Does he have to give you the permission to give that information to the buyer's agent?
You should
The
ask.
seller's agent?
You should ask. Yeah, I mean, you're there to help your buyer, right? You're talking about the buyer right now.
Well, I'm talking about the seller, but you're right. If I'm representing the buyer on a contingency,
Right?
okay, am I allowed to tell the seller, no, they can't do this without selling their?
Only if the buyer tells you that you have the right, you're allowed to tell
do
them.
it, right, okay.
Yeah, you in a fiduciary position, you should be acting as if you're the seller or the buyer or the seller, depending on who you're representing.
So when it comes to yak back on me,
Well, and that's why, you know,
control this and-
because that's a personal information, correct?
Right.
Okay. As an example, if the buyer tells you, you know, and I've had buyers that do this, I don't want you to tell them my financial position. They'll take advantage of it.
Right.
I don't do it. But if that will help, then I try to get the buyer to allow me to do what I can to help get him in the best position. Okay. Any questions on the contingency? Then we're going to go to the concurrency and we'll be done.
I have a question then.
Shauna?
For both of them.
General is good.
So if I'm representing the buyer and we present a concurrent or contingent offer, and they say, well, we'll accept it, but we're gonna use our forms, right? They want their immediate release used instead of our concurrency form. How do you address that?
Okay, I'm going to talk about a general, I think I understood your question, and I'm going to answer the question. Periodically, we have somebody that wants to use a form that isn't ours. Am I correct?
Yes.
We can use any form that we want, any form that they want. You need to do two things. One is you need to talk to the manager, have them look at it. And two, but they can use any form that they want. It's their contract. It's not ours.
But I can still try to talk.
It
them
happens to
into
be
it,
our,
right?
it happens to be our format.
Right.
But it's their contract. You got to keep that in mind. They're the ones signing
Are you
it.
talking about the buyer or the seller?
Any contracts that we use. If somebody were to say to you, I don't like your contingency form, I've got another one I've seen or I've used or whatever it be, I want to use that one. You can use it. It's their contract.
Yeah, I've had them say, we don't like your concurrency addendum, let's use
Right,
ours. It's
right.
an immediate release. I'm like, well, it's the same thing, but okay.
It
Okay.
sounds
Yeah.
like you're talking about the other agent though, right?
Right, the sellers, they're representing the seller, and I presented a concurrency
Yeah,
offer.
okay.
Yeah, when you're working for, now if somebody
They
presents,
say, no, we're not using that, we'll use our immediate release.
okay, let me use an example. I think I know where you're going with this. The question is if you get a contract from another agent, am I doing it the right way? If I get a I'll do this anyway because it's most common. I get a contract from another real estate company, and they're using a form. She has the answer to that. And I get a form, and this is important because this is not an uncommon question, even from experienced people, because we get used to using things a certain way, doing it a certain way. If you get a contract from another real estate company, okay, and you've got it laying there. It's from, you can pick the company, whatever it is. And you read the contract, and they have contingency or concurrency form that you don't like. And then you say, well, I'm not sure about this. I'm going to sit to Fox. He's really smart. Oh, hey, Jim. So you send it to Fox. He reads it over and says, I don't like it either. You can counteroffer with your concurrency or contingency form. Now, the other agent may go ballistics because they're not used to something like that. But yeah, why can you? Because the seller's allowed you to. The seller, you've said to the seller, you know, I read their contingency form. I don't want to change 2,000 things in this thing. We have one. Here's what it says. I think we should use ours. And the seller says, good idea, Shauna. They've just allowed you to make the contract the way you've suggested. You write it up, you put it on your contingency form, you send it back to the other real estate agent, and you say, gosh, thanks for I'm fine with the contingency, but not on your form, on this one here.
Yeah, I totally understand that.
Okay.
It's when you're representing a buyer and they.
Well, when the buyer says he doesn't like it, it's his contract again.
Right.
And if the buyer says, I don't want to use it, you say, fine. You know which form do you want to use? Do you understand what it says? And you can have him use his contingency form. You send it over. The other agent has to accept it, though. I have another question for you. This is confusing, and I want to talk about this for a minute. If a buyer wants to write a purchase agreement on a house, and we're going to go back to the concurrency, and then we'll finish up. If the buyer wants to write a contract on a house, and you're working with the buyer, do they have to use our forms? Do they have to use them? Do you have to say, we have a purchase agreement, you need to write it on our purchase agreement. Do you have to?
No.
Why? Why?
Because a contract is a contract, whether it's not.
Right, it's their contract. We happen to be writing it on our forms. And that's the way we prefer and the way we like. And why do we prefer and like it?
We're familiar with it.
Because I know what it says sometimes. We're familiar with it. But you know why do I know this? Because I've had buyers say, my attorney's going to write the contract. What do I say to them? No, you've got to use mine. Right? They can use anybody's they want. Now, that doesn't mean we practice that way, nor do we tell people to do it that way. But nor do we want it. But anybody, they can write any contract they want. They have to live by it. You know, and you present it. Now, there are certain forms that you have to have, though. The state of Ohio requires certain forms when we're dealing with it, right? And then Jim, you might, or Drew, you guys might be able to answer this for me. If I have a state of Ohio form and they want me to present a contract and they won't sign my state of Ohio form, I think I can still present a contract. It's just like say, you know, they wouldn't sign these forms. They want me to present the contract. I've had them put down here, will not sign.
Yeah.
You know,
Have them sign it.
I've explained to them who I'm representing and everything, but they won't sign it. The state of Ohio regulates who? You. Does it regulate the buyer? No. That's for sure. Or the seller. So, okay. Now let's do the concurrency and then we'll finish up. So this one here, why don't I like it? Contingency form. Why don't I like it? There's no reason to give anybody any time to make a decision on something they can make months in advance. All right? And the only thing it does is hurt your seller. Okay? And I really believe it really doesn't help your buyer because it doesn't motivate him to do what he should do, which is what?
Make up their mind.
Make up their mind and sell their house. And if somebody says to me they're worried their house might not sell today, the first question I would ask is, why? Well, you never know. Well, I do. I know because 4 houses on your street, all sold in a day, over full price. Unless you're going to ask some outrageous number, I got that feeling you're going to be okay. All right?
So Gary, what is your recommendation if the buyer needs to have a contingency?
The concurrency.